Hello friends! In this lesson, we will use different rhythms to allow you to learn how to read and write music on the staff. Before we begin, I recommend you complete the musical symbols and values lesson to fully understand the content of this class. Let's begin with an easy exercise. Remember that quarter notes or crotchets last a beat, and eighth notes last half a beat. For this lesson, we are not going to pay attention to the pitches of the symbols. We will focus on the rhythm. Let's produce the rhythm of each example with our voice. I'm going to do it first, and then you try alone with the metronome. Tan 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 tan. I use the syllable ta to say each note, but you can say any word or syllable that feels natural to you. What is important right now is precision with rhythm. For example, quarter notes must last the entire beat. You cannot stop them before. It must be clear that eighth notes last half a quarter note. Let's repeat the example, but this time I won't say anything. Only the metronome will sound, and you should say the rhythm aloud. If you watched the previous lesson, I know you can say the rhythm of the following example without my help. Remember that half notes or minims must last 2 beats, and whole notes or semibrevis must last 4 beats. Try with the metronome, but remember to count to 4. Now with the piano for you to compare. Repeat this exercise until you feel that these note values are easy. Let's try one more time with me saying the rhythm. Tan 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 tan. Do you remember rests? The following exercise uses an eighth note rest and then an eighth note per beat. As you can hear, every eighth note is played after the beat. This is called offbeat or syncopation. Let's try with the voice together. Tan, 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 tan. Try with the metronome. In the following example, we introduce 16th notes or semiquavers. Now with the voice. Tan 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 taka 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 tan 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 taka 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 tan. I say taka taka for 4/8 notes, but you can say whatever you prefer. Remember that music must have strong and weak beats, so it is important to accentuate the first note on the first beat and the first 16th note in the group of 4. Say the rhythm with the metronome. Now let's try a very common combination. 2/16 notes followed by an 8th note per beat. As you can see, 16 and 8th notes can be grouped together with a beam if they are on the same beat. As always, each note value is differentiated by the number of beams at the end of the stem. Let's hear. When I was learning this combination, I used to think of a galloping horse to remember the sound. Let's hear the exercise with my voice. Takatan, 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 tan. Try with the metronome. The following exercise is similar to the previous. The difference is that each beat begins with an 8th note followed by 2/16 notes. With the voice, it would be like this. Tan takatan 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 takatan. Now you. This exercise has a 16th note followed by an 8th note and then another 16th note per beat. With the voice, taka kataka 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 kata. Now you with the metronome. Let's say we want to write a song that begins with a half note. So far, we have completed 2 beats of the first measure. Then, let's add a quarter note. We have completed 3 beats of the first measure. Remember that each measure can only have 4 beats. Let's say we need a note that lasts for 2 beats, like a half note. What do? We cannot add a half note in the last beat because we would be exceeding the limit of the measure with a total of 5 beats. To solve this problem, we can use a quarter note on the last beat and then add another quarter note in the first beat of the next measure. Then we can use a curved line called a tie that joins 2 note values to add the duration of the 2 notes. The quarter notes tied together last the same amount of time as a half note. Now, let's say we want to add a note that lasts 3 beats. The solution is simple. We can tie a quarter note and a half note. The tie will always be over or under the head of the note, at the opposite side of the stem. It sounds like this. With the voice, it would sound like this. Tan, 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 tan. Try with the metronome. Besides the tie, other symbols modify the duration of note values. The dot is one of those modifiers. It's a small dot added to the right of the note head that affects the duration of the note value by adding half of its duration. For example, a dotted half note would have a duration of 3 beats. It's like using a tie with the next lower note value. A half note tied with a quarter note has the same duration as a dotted half note. The following exercise has a dotted quarter note followed by an eighth note. With my voice, it would sound like this. Tan 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 tan. Now you try with the metronome. An eighth note has the same duration of two 16 notes. If we add a dot to an eighth note, the duration would be the sum of three 16th notes, because we have added half of its duration. Let's try a dotted eighth note followed by a 16th note per beat. Now with the voice. Ta kata 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 kata. These 16th notes can be tricky. Try to be as precise as possible. So far, we have learned that every note value has half the duration of its longer note value. This leads us to a problem. Imagine that we want to write three notes that have the same duration on the same beat. With the note values I have taught you, there is no way of doing that. To solve this problem, we use a modifier called a triplet. A triplet of any note value takes the same time of two of the same note values without the triplet. For example, an eighth note triplet will take the same time as two eighth notes. In a triplet, the three notes must have equal duration. Let's hear an example comparing two regular eighth notes with an eighth note triplet. Compare and learn the difference between eighth notes and eighth note triplets. Tan 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 ta 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 tan 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 ta 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 tan. Now you with the metronome. We've learned that we use a quarter note to write a note that should last the whole beat. To write two notes per beat, we use eighth notes. To write three notes per beat, we use a triplet. And to write four notes per beat, we use 16th notes. But have you wondered how to write 5, 6, or 7 notes per beat? The same way we used triplets before, we can group note values to divide the beat in any number of equal divisions. We call this grouping of note values a tuplet. A triplet is a tuplet. The quintuplet is another tuplet where 5 note values take the same time of 4. If you need to write 5 notes with the same duration on one beat, you would use a 16th note quintuplet. As I have mentioned before, it is very important that the sum of the note values in any measure equals 4 beats. There is one case where this rule doesn't have to be followed, and that's in the first measure. A song doesn't have to begin on the first beat, it can begin on any beat of the measure. The following example begins in the last beat of a measure. As you can see, the song has a quarter note and then a bar line. A quarter note cannot complete a measure by itself, but this is allowed in the first measure because a melody can begin at any beat of the measure. We use the term anacrusis to refer to a melody that begins on any weak beat or any other than the first of any measure. When numbering the measures on the staff, the first measure is the first one with 4 beats. Let's say the rhythm. In this case, we count to 3 to begin because of the anacrusis. Tan 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 ta 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 tan 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 ta 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 tan. Now you. Sometimes, when there is anacrusis, the last measure is also incomplete in terms of beats. But if we add the note values from the anacrusis with the ones in the last measure, they equal 4 beats. Another duration modifier is the staccato. It's a tiny circle or dot similar to a dotted note, but located above or below the note head. It means that the note should be played quickly and separated from the surrounding notes. Let's hear an example. Each staccato note must be short enough to be separated instead of playing until reaching the next note. Let's do it with our voice. Tan, 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 tan. Now you alone. Let's practice everything you have learned so far. This time the metronome will be alone first. Try to read it all aloud with your voice, without any help, and pause the video if necessary. I know it might seem too much at first sight, but you have all the knowledge needed to read this. Use our online metronome on a slow setting if you think the following metronome is too fast. Let's hear the piano to see if you have done it right. Now do it with my voice. Tan 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 takata katan takatan takakatan tan 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 ta 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 tan. You must be wondering what the two number 4s at the beginning of the staff are. These numbers are called the time signature, and they indicate the meter or organization of the beats. The whole rhythm depends on those numbers. In the following lesson, you are going to learn everything about time signatures with examples of popular music. I recommend that you repeat this lesson using the online drums you can find at sessiontown.com. Use it in combination with the online metronome to practice each exercise at different speeds. You will find the links below the video. You can also use any instrument you have. The most important thing you can do right now is to practice each example from a low tempo and then build up the speed. If you use our virtual metronome, you can click on the Add Automation button to add rows that will be played after the number of bars or measures are completed from the first row. This allows you to use an automatic metronome that plays at a different tempo every certain number of measures. For example, set the metronome at 60 BPM for 3 measures or bars. Then add a new row and set it to 70 BPM for 3 more measures. You can keep adding all the rows you need to study. Please share this music course with your friends, family, and fellow musicians. And thanks for clicking the thumbs up button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media to be the first to know about new content. Happy learning!